I'm Chris Wallace. President Trump rolls out his budget this week and continues his offensive on health care.
Action on Obamacare is an urgent necessity.
We'll discuss the prospects for repeal and replace, the president's first report card on jobs, and his plan for tax reform. With Gary Cohen, the White House chief economic advisor. It's his first Sunday show interview. Then, conservative Republicans are pushing back on the party's health care plan.
The goal is real simple. Get rid of this terrible law and do what we told the voters we're going to do.
We'll talk with Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, founding member of the House Freedom Caucus, who says he doesn't think Speaker Ryan's proposal has the votes to pass. And we'll ask our Sunday panel about WikiLeaks' exposure of CIA spy secrets.
The CIA was so careless to produce this material and lose control of it.
All right now on Fox News Sunday. And hello again from Fox News in Washington. Just over halfway through his first 100 days, President Trump faces a showdown over a key legislative initiative. The House Republican plan to repeal and replace Obamacare is encountering stiff opposition from the right wing of the party. In a few minutes, we'll talk with one of those opponents, Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio, founding member of the House Freedom Caucus. But first, the director of the White House National Economic Council and one of the president's top advisors, Gary Cohen, in his first Sunday show interview. Gary, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office will report this week, perhaps as early as tomorrow, on its assessment of the repeal and replace plan. And there are other groups that are estimating that the CBO will say that between 6 and 15 million people will lose coverage under the Obamacare repeal and replace plan. Will the president support a bill that throws millions of Americans off insurance?
Well, Chris, you have to remember where we are. We came into office with an insurance plan that doesn't work. Obamacare just is not working. You know, in the last year alone, premiums are up 25%. In a third of the counties in this country, we have only one insurance provider. Therefore, American citizens don't have a choice. We have no choice but to make the plan better for all Americans out there. We will get a score next week. CBO will do what they need to do. We will see what the score is. In the past, the CBO score has really been meaningless. They've said that many more people be insured than are actually insured. But look, when we get the CBO score, we'll deal with that.
But to repeat my question, will the president support a plan? If the CBO says that millions of people will lose their health insurance coverage, will the president continue to support that plan?
But, Chris, it's not just about coverage. It's about access to care. It's about access to be able to see your doctors. The numbers of who's covered and who's not covered, that's interesting, and I know that may make some headlines, but what we care about is people's ability to get health care and people's ability to go see their doctor. That's what we care about, and that's what we're driving for.
But Gary, coverage is really important if you lose it, and this is not what the president promised during the campaign. Take a look.
Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say, because a lot of times they say, no, the lower 25%, they can't afford private. But
universal health care.
I am going to take care of everybody. I don't care if it costs me votes or not. Everybody's going to be taken care of much better than they're taken care of now.
President Trump, then candidate Trump, said everybody's got to be covered. Not, well, that's just an interesting number.
Well, Chris, we're offering coverage to everyone. If you're on Medicaid today, you're going to stay on Medicaid. If you're covered under an employee-sponsored plan, you're going to continue to be covered under an employee-sponsored plan. If you fall into that middle group, we're going to provide tax credits so you can go out and buy a plan, and buy a plan that you want, not a plan that Washington is determining that you should buy.
But I guess the question is this. 20 million people gained coverage. I have health insurance coverage now who didn't have it before Obamacare. Are some of them going to lose coverage because, one, you're going to end over a period of years the Medicaid expansion, and two, the tax credits are not going to provide as much help as the subsidies did to help people who can't afford coverage?
Chris, we don't think so. If you're on Medicaid, you're going to stay on Medicaid.
But not the expanded Medicaid.
If you're on Medicaid, you're going to stay. The expansion is not going to change. There's a roll-off period. There's a period of transition, and we're very confident that the period of transition is going to work. If you're going to the exchanges today, and we're going to give you tax credits, going to allow you to buy insurance with tax credits. And if you're more than half of the Americans today, 175 million plus Americans, are getting their health insurance through employee-sponsored coverage plans. So we believe if you want to have coverage, and we think that everyone should have coverage, we're providing you access to coverage.
The most conservative House Republicans are demanding a couple of changes to the plan that you guys are now supporting, and I want to ask you about those. First, end the expansion of Medicaid next year, not in 2020, and two, end insurance mandates that require plans cover some benefits, a wide range of benefits, including maternity care. Will the president negotiate with the hardline conservatives on those, or will he stand by the so-called Ryan bill, the repeal and replace bill that is now before Congress, as Sean Spicer said he would on Friday?
Chris, I think the president has been very open and transparent on the issue that he's been willing to accept improvements to the bill. We've gone out of our way, and the president has said this, to say that anything that makes the bill better for Americans, we are willing to accept. We've met with many groups over the last week and a half. We've talked to as many different groups as we possibly could, and anyone that comes up with an improvement, we are more than happy to accept. In fact, the president wants to implement many of these improvements. He's very concerned that we have as many products out there as we can for consumers. He wants to have the ability for insurance companies to sell across state lines. In fact, he's insisting that insurance companies have the ability to sell across state lines.
Do you think that ending the expansion of Medicaid next year, rather than a slower rollout in 2020, do you think that improves the bill?
Look, we're trying to give the governors the ability to control what goes on in their states. Many of the governors have done a very good job. All the governors have done a very good job with health care in their states, and we were trying to work with the governors to give them more control of what they're doing in their states.
How important is this bill to the president? How hard will he fight for it? Is he willing to go out to districts and call out Republicans by name who oppose it? And does he view this, his first legislative initiative, as make or break for his young presidency?
The president, the vice president, all of us in the White House are fully committed to this bill, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get it passed. Yes, he's going to travel. Yes, he's going to go out to the different congressional regions, and he's going to be personally involved in getting this passed.
You got some good jobs numbers on Friday. I'm going to put them up. 235,000 jobs created, unemployment down from 4.8 to 4.7%. But during the campaign, candidate Trump dismissed reports like that.
Don't believe those phony numbers when you hear 4.9 and 5% unemployment. The number's probably 28, 29, as high as 35. In fact, I even heard recently 42%.
So if that's true, why should we believe these numbers? And the fact is, didn't you inherit an economy that has been for the last 18 months somewhere between 4.6 and 5% unemployment?
Chris, look, the economy continues to grow, and we're doing our part. We're doing more than our part to have the economy grow. I'm sure you've noticed all of the CEOs that have been into the White House recently and all the announcements that these CEOs have made, including last week when Exxon was in and talked about a multiple billion, tens of billions of dollar investment in the Gulf of Mexico where they're going to create 45,000 new jobs. We've had many other CEO announcements in the White House, and all of them have said to the president when they talk to the president, we are creating these jobs because you, Mr. President, and your policies. These jobs have not hit the job market yet. These are jobs that will be coming over the remainder of this year and next year. So we're very, very excited about the job outlook in this country.
Well, let me ask you about something that perhaps you're not so excited about. The Federal Reserve is almost certain to raise interest rates when they meet this week. Are you worried, excuse me, are you worried that if there is a series of rate hikes over this year and early next year, that could hinder economic growth?
Look, Chris, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and they operate as such. They have their economic data, which they look at, and they are trying to always modulate, economic growth with inflation, with the workforce. And I think the Federal Reserve has been doing a good job in doing that. The Fed will do what they need to do, and we respect the powers of the Fed. It's our job at the White House, and it's the president's job, and he is pushing us every day to continue to grow the economy, to create jobs and encourage manufacturing jobs and all jobs here in the United States, and to remove any and all barriers to job creation.
Let's turn to another subject, and that's the budget that the administration will release this week. Here are some key outlines we know about the budget. $54 billion increase in defense spending to be offset by equal cuts in domestic spending. And here are some of the reductions that the White House is considering. A 24% cut in the Environmental Protection Agency, an 11% cut for TSA, including airport security, a 37% cut for the State Department and foreign aid. Question, Gary, is that the Trump vision for the country?
Chris, President Trump ran on a platform of protecting America, building our military, and creating military superiority. Over the last 2 or 3 weeks, President Trump has had in all of the generals of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and they have talked to him about our preparedness and our readiness. And it's disappointing to hear where these generals say we are. We have underinvested in our military over the last 8 years. Our military budget has been subject to sequester. We have been unable to invest in our military. Unfortunately, we have no alternative but to reinvest in our military and make ourselves a military power once again. If you're doing that in an area where you have to balance the budget and you cannot create a further deficit, you have to make cuts. It's no different than every other family in America that has to make the tough decisions. When they need to spend money somewhere, they have to cut it from somewhere else. These are tough decisions, but the president has shown he's ready, willing, and able to make these tough decisions.
Finally, in the couple of minutes we have left, Gary, I want to talk about you. You were one of 6 former executives at Goldman Sachs who was part of this administration. Goldman Sachs, of course, one of Wall Street's biggest firms. The president promised to drain the swamp, but aren't the 6 of you part of what's been called the Wall Street-Washington revolving door?
Look, Chris, I came to Washington to make America great again and help the president with his vision and his mission, and that's what I'm doing. And I come in every day, I roll up my sleeves, I work with the president, I work with the amazing staff that the president has put together in the White House, and that's exactly what we're trying to do.
What do you think of Preet Bharara?
I don't really have an opinion.
Well, wait a minute. I mean, you were the president of Goldman Sachs. You were one of the leaders of Wall Street. This guy was going after Wall Street, going after public corruption for 7 years. You don't have an opinion?
No, I don't. You know, I was involved in Wall Street and running a bank. I'm involved in Washington right now. You know, in big corporations, you have division of labors, and you have certain people that take care of certain obligations in certain parts of your business, and I was not involved in that part of our business. So, you know, you can't do everything.
No, I understand that. As a tough prosecutor, though, who was involved in going after public corruption cases and going after Wall Street crime, wasn't he draining the swamp?
Chris, as I said, I don't really have an opinion. It was not an area where I spent a lot of time.
We're going to leave it there. Gary, thank you so much. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for talking to us about the areas you are focusing on. And please come back, sir.
Chris, thanks for having me.
Up next, one of the leaders of the conservative opposition